Hilchos Korban Pesach, Perek Shmini, the laws of the Passover sacrifice, chapter 8. We're learning today, after 7 chapters, about the offering of the Korban Pesach. Today, tomorrow, the next day, we're learning about eating the Korban Pesach. Because the thing about the Korban Pesach is that, unlike any other sacrifice, there's a special mitzvah to eat it. Every other sacrifice, the mitzvah is to offer it, and part of that mitzvah is also that part of it should be eaten. But with the Korban Pesach, the main thing is to eat it. That's why we saw yesterday that if a Passover sacrifice is offered in impurity, you eat it in impurity. Talmud says the Passover sacrifice to begin with is only meant for eating. And the Rabbi once explained why, mystically, because the whole idea of Pesach is about the gashmias, the physicality of a Jew. That's why it was so important that we leave Egypt with riches. It was our body's redemption, besides for also our soul's redemption. Therefore, we put an extra stress on the mitzvahs related to the gashmias, to eating the matzah, to eating the maror, and to eating the Korban Pesach. So today, tomorrow, and the next day, we're talking about eating the Korban Pesach. And of course, everything is by divine providence. We're learning about Pesach going into Sukkot. The most obvious connection between Pesach and Sukkot is that they both celebrate the exodus from Egypt. Why do we celebrate Pesach? Because that's the day we left Mitzrayim. Why do we celebrate Sukkot? Because when God took us out of Egypt, we were kept in the clouds of glory. So, right there, they're both commemorating the same event. They both begin on the 15th day of the month. There's a mitzvah to eat on both of them, as you said before. Eat the Korban Pesach and eat in the Sukkah. By the way, out of all the nights, tonight, the first night of Sukkot, is the best, or is the biggest mitzvah to eat in the Sukkah. So today we're going to be learning about eating the Korban Pesach on the night of the 15th of Nisan, going into the night of the 15th of Tishrei. So I think that's pretty cool. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Achilas halacha aleph. Achilas psara pesach belil chamisha asar mitzvah saseh. Eating the meat of the Passover sacrifice on the night of the 15th of Nisan is a positive commandment. Shenemar, as it says, ve'ochlu es habasar balayla hazeh. They shall eat the meat on this night, tzli eish umatzos, roasted over fire, together with matzah, al merayrim yechluhu, together with maror, they should also eat it. Clear mitzvah right there, to eat the meat. Now, even though the Torah says eat the meat with matzah and maror, the truth is, ve'ein matzah u'maror me'akvin. The matzah and the maror are not essential. Im loy matzu matzah u'maror, if you couldn't find any matzah, or you couldn't find any bitter herbs, you fulfill your obligation just by eating the meat of the Passover sacrifice alone. Aval maror b'lei pesach einay mitzvah. But just the bitter herbs, if you don't have the Passover meat, that's not a mitzvah at all. Shenemar, because it says, and this is actually a verse from the second Pesach, Pesach Sheni, it says, al matzos u'merayrim yechluhu. You should eat it with matzah and maror. So maror is only mentioned in the context of the Korban Pesach. If you don't have a Korban Pesach, there's no maror. Matzah, on the other hand, by the way, there's a special verse, doesn't mention it over here. We spoke about it in the laws of matzah. Matzah says clearly, ba'erev tochlu matzot. In the evening of Passover, you should eat matzah. That means even if there's no Korban Pesach, even if there's no maror, it's a biblical mitzvah to eat matzah, which is why even today, we have a biblical mitzvah to eat matzah. But maror is only a rabbinic injunction today, because we don't have the Korban Pesach.
Today we have to eat matzah?
Yes, biblically. No, not today. Pesach, yeah. Halacha Gimel, mitzvah min hamuvchar, it's the ideal mitzvah. The choicest way to do the mitzvah of eating the Korban Pesach is lechol b'sara Pesach achilas soiva, to eat the meat of the Korban Pesach when you're already full. So it's like kind of as you're going out of the meal. Once you've eaten very well, now you seal the deal with the Korban Pesach. Lefichach, therefore, im hikriv shalmei chagiga ba'arba asar, if besides for the Korban Pesach, you also manage to offer the chagiga, peace offering, on the 14th, which we'll have more information about that in the next set of laws. So the ideal way you would do it is you would first have a course of meat from the chagiga, and then you would eat the meat of the Korban Pesach so that your full satiation comes from it. But that's only the ideal way. If you didn't have that, and all you ate was an olive-sized portion of the Passover sacrifice, and that's it, you fulfilled your obligation, because again, it's only mitzvah min hamuvchar. It's ideal to do it ala soiva, but if you didn't do it, it's fine. Besides for the mitzvah to eat the first Pesach, v'chein, so too says the Rambam, achilas psar Pesach sheni, B'leili chamisha asar l'chedesh iyar mitzvah saseh. The eating of the meat of the second Passover, which you do on the night of the 15th of Iyar, the next month if you missed it. The first time round, mitzvah saseh, it's a positive commandment. Shenemar boy, because also by the Passover sacrifice, the second one it says, same verse we just quoted, al matzah sumereirim yechluhu, you eat it over matzah and mar. Clear mitzvah to eat it specifically. Halacha dalid, how do you eat it? How do you cook? Or how do you process the Passover meat? Ushnehen einon ne'acholin elot tzli eish. Both the first Passover and the second Passover can only be eaten roasted over fire. If you eat from them a kazayas, even an olive-sized portion, no literally means raw, but we're going to see it doesn't mean fully raw, it means partially raw. We'll see in a moment. Or you eat from it cooked in water, not roasted over fire, Lipskier on either of the nights of first or second Passover, loike you mamish get lashes. It's a prohibition. Shenemar, because it says, Al toichlu mimenu na uvashel mevushal b'mayim. Do not eat from it raw, nor cooked in water. Ochal na umevushal ke'achas. What if you ate together one piece that was partially cooked in water and partially raw? Eine loike ala achas. You only get one set of lashes. Lefisha shneya nichlales balav echad. Look in the Torah. How does it structure the prohibition? It only says one time al, only one time no. Don't eat it raw and cooked. So if you eat it raw, you get lashes. If you eat it cooked, you also get lashes. But if you eat both together, since it only says one time no, you still only get one set of lashes. Interesting. Let's say you ate raw or cooked Korban Pesach meat while it's still day. So you're eating it in the wrong time and the wrong way. So funny enough, you actually do not get lashes. Why? Shenemar, because the verse says, don't eat it raw or cooked. Ki'im tzli eish. Rather, roasted over fire. So Torah puts together roasting over fire and cooking and raw, which means, B'shah shemitzvah la'achle tzali, chayav alachilas no mevushal. In a time when it's a mitzvah to eat it roasted, if you don't eat it roasted, you eat it raw or cooked, you're liable. Aval mi ba'idiyah potter. But if you would eat it in this way while it's still there, you'd be exempt. Achal mimenu kezayis tzali mi ba'idiyah. If you ate from it roasted, fully roasted, while it's still day, so now it's cooked the right way, but it's the wrong time, avar al mitzvah saseh. Now you've transgressed a positive mitzvah. Shenemar, because it says, va'achlu es habasar balayla hazeh. They must eat this meat on the nighttime, balayla v'lei bayayim, which means nighttime, not daytime. V'lav haba miklal aseh asehu. When we learn a negative prohibition from the terminology of a positive commandment, it becomes considered like a positive commandment. Torah says, eat it by night, which implies not by day. That not by day has the halachic status of a positive commandment. Okay, let's define now raw. What does it mean raw? Na shehizhira alav Torah. When Torah warns against eating na, which again literally means raw, hu habasar shehischil b'masei ha'ur. It does not mean fully raw. It means meat that was beginning to be affected by the fire, v'nitzle ma'at, a little bit roasted, but not yet fit for humans to consume. So not even rare, I guess, because rare, right? Look, I'm not a maven in meat. Okay, I don't like my meat any pink. I like it well done. People want it red inside. So obviously, it's the level before any human being would eat it. At any point that a human being wouldn't eat it yet, but it has to be a little bit affected by the fire. If you just ate totally raw, literally straight from the animal, you took it into your mouth, you don't get lashes. You've canceled the fulfillment of a positive commandment, because Torah says it should be roasted over fire, which means if it's not roasted, it's forbidden. But I can't hold you accountable till you eat it raw in the way Torah describes it, which is partially cooked. What if you went to the other extreme? You roasted it so much that it became burnt, scorched, or like charred. And you ate it. Potter, you're exempt. Shouldn't do it, but again, can't hold you accountable. You roasted it over fire. That is the no. What about mevushal? Mevushal sheyizhira alav Torah. When Torah says cooking, it warns against cooking. That means bein sheni bashal b'mayim, bein sheni bashal b'shar mashkin, oid b'mei peres. Doesn't matter if it was cooked in water, other liquids, or fruit juice. Shenemar, because Torah uses double expression. Uvashel mevushal. Cooked. Cooked means riba hakol. Means to include all types of cooking. Cooked this way, cooked that way. I don't care how it's cooked. If it's cooked, you can't eat it. Salahu va'achar kach bishloi. Let's say you roasted it and then you cooked it. Or you cooked it and then you roasted it. So somewhere in the process you did the roasting, but somewhere in the process you did the cooking. Or you did pot roast. Pot roast either means completely dry, you put it in a pot, empty, over the fire, or it was a little bit of a juicy piece of meat and it cooked in its own juices. But the point is, you didn't introduce any foreign liquid. There was no foreign liquid. Chayav, doesn't matter. In all these cases, you're liable because of the cooking element that takes place. Aval, but it is permitted, mutar lasuch oisai beyayin v'shemen udvash u'bishar mashkin u'meiperes. You could not really cook it. It's like
Marinate them.
I don't know if you can go so far as marinate, but kind of coat them. You can rub it.
Right, because if you marinate
You can.
it or rub it,
I feel like if you marinate it, it's already cooking. Yeah, in some level. Right. But you can rub it with wine or rub it with oil, rub it with honey, or other liquids or fruit juices. Chutz min hamayim, except for water. Do not even coat it in water. There's an element of cooking there that you don't want to get into. Umuter l'tabel habasar achar shenitzla v'mashkim u'v'meiperes. After the meat is roasted, you can dip it also into other liquids or to fruit juice. Again, not part of the cooking process, just part of the eating process. Halacha tes ein soilin es Pesach al gabe kli even kli matches. You cannot roast the Passover sacrifice over a stone utensil or a metal utensil. Shenemar tzli eish lo tzli davar acher, because it says roasted over fire, not by anything else. Once you heat up stone or metal, the stone or metal itself becomes a source of heat, and now that's roasting it, not the fire. Lefichach, therefore, im haya kli menukav, kadesh tishlet by ha'ur, if there was a perforated utensil that you're roasting it over, so then the fire can attach itself to, or can catch the actual meat. Tzeilin alav, you can roast over it. Be'ein tzeilin oisei b'shvud shel mateches. You do not use a metal spit going through the animal, sharei ashvud kulei cham v'tzeilin mekayman, because metal tends to heat up inherently. And now the metal spit will be roasting the inside of the animal, not the fire. Halacha yod, what if you didn't have any fire present? Hisik esatanor. You lit an oven with wood and everything, and you brought it to a very high temperature. The garaf is kol ha'esh, and then you clear out all the fuel. So now all there is hot walls of the oven. V'talahu batanor v'tzalahu. When you hung it in the oven, it's not touching any of the walls. And you roasted it. So now all the heat is radiating from the walls, but there's no source of heat, there's no fire. Hareza asur she'ein zetz liyesh. That's forbidden. That's not roasted by fire. Chatcha, if you cut it up, v'tzalahu al gabi gechalim, and you roast it over coals. Okay, not mamish like this. This is already a grate over here. But let's say you put it directly onto the coals. You put it onto the coals, zetz liyesh. That's fine. Technically speaking, it's fine. You roasted it over fire. Salahu al gabi sid, oicharsis oichamitvaria. If you roasted it over lime or clay or the hot springs of Tiberias, obviously, in a way, the commentaries say that somehow you got the hot springs into Jerusalem because you cannot roast it outside of Jerusalem. But let's say you had, this was like, it was channeled into Yerushalayim, and you have a hot spring, and you roasted it over the hot spring. Hareza asur she'ein zetz liyesh. In all these scenarios, it's forbidden. It's not roasted by fire. It's roasted by something else. Ketzad seilin oisei. How would they go about roasting it? This is the ideal way. You would pierce it from its mouth all the way to its rectum with a wooden spit. You would hang it in the oven with the fire under. You see over here, this pole in the oven here is going to hold the spit. They're going to put it in. Huh? It's not. I imagine it would be. Otherwise, yeah, I imagine. But let's just say that this is the holders of the spit, and you would hang the spit over those two holders, so the actual meat would never contact anything around it, and would be heated by direct fire. Other people say that they used to roast it in the ground. You ever see those pictures of the Karaites? They do it even today. They have these, they dig these deep pits, and you hang it this way, vertically on the spit, and you put it into the fire, and then it roasts. The point is, it has to be roasting by fire without direct contact to anything else. Its legs and its intestines should be hung outside of it in the oven. Do not put them inside. That's like cooking. Remember, at this point, the lamb has already been split open, so all the meat and the fats that go on the mizbeach were taken out. So you've already got access to the intestines and everything. So you take it all out, you leave just the meat, and everything else gets roasted outside. It says the Rambam historically, they used to use pomegranate wood, a pomegranate spit for its roasting, because pomegranate wood apparently doesn't release as much sap, and so it wouldn't cook. It stays very dry. The wood stays very dry. It was so important that the meat stay off contact that if any of the meat touched the clay of the oven, you must peel off that part because it's been roasted by the pottery, not by the fire. If some juice dripped off the animal onto the pottery of the oven, and then the juice came back onto the lamb, now, not only do you peel away the part, you must take a little chunk out of the meat because the juice penetrates more. Any gravy or moisture which detaches itself from the animal while it's being roasted is forbidden. It's not roast meat. Now that it came back, it penetrates what's called a kedei netila, about a finger's breadth. And you must take off that entire piece of meat. You have to watch. You have to watch from outside. Yud Gimel, notaf meirot bayal aseilas, if its juice dripped onto flour. It's just a side law, not really related to the actual Korban Pesach. But let's say you were taking it out, and on the way out, some juice dripped onto a sack of flour that you had over there. Yiklef es mekoymei v'yashlichenu. You must peel off that part of the flour and discard it wherever the juice fell, because you cannot partake of any part of the Passover sacrifice if it's not connected to the sacrifice itself. Now it's sitting in the flour, you got to take it away. Yudalid sachay b'shemen shel truma. We said before that you can coat the Passover sacrifice with some oil. Let's say by mistake you didn't realize, and you coated it with truma oil that can only be eaten by a Kohen. So im chavuras hakohanim yechlu. If it's David and his relatives, it's all the Kohanim. It's a Kohen's group, so no problem. You can all eat truma, eat it. The im shal Yisrael, if it's a regular Israelite group, the rest of us, we cannot eat truma. You just coated our Passover sacrifice with truma. Now what do I do? Im chayhu, if it's still raw, hasn't been cooked yet, yedichenu v'yenagev. Wash it with water and then dry it. The Rambam adds the word dry because I said before you can't coat it with water. So if you are coating it with water to get the oil off, you have to dry it, and then you're good. If it's already been roasted, you must peel the entire outer layer of the animal. That's where the oil got absorbed, and then you're good. If you coated it with oil of second tithe, which is fine, you're in Jerusalem, you're supposed to only eat second tithe in Jerusalem. What's not fine is to pay for it. You cannot include it in the price for the people of the RSVP group. Because that would be like redeeming or buying back Ma'aser Sheni in Jerusalem, which is not allowed, as we explained in the last book, 2 books ago, in the laws of Ma'aser Sheni. We do not roast 2 Passover sacrifices together, so they shouldn't get mixed up. Even if one is a goat and one is a lamb, it's 2 different animals. But we're scared. We don't want to get into any mixtures. Imagine you have 2 Passovers roasting at once, and then each group forgets who it is. Both groups are canceled, because you can only eat the Passover which you're registered to. Now you don't know which one it is. So everyone has to be roasted individually. Halacha tesvav kvar be'arnu v'kam mekaymis. We already explained in many places she'eina pesach nechal ela ad chatzos kedei laharchik min ha'avera, that in order to keep away from doing a transgression, the rabbi said you should only eat the Passover sacrifice till midnight. However, v'din Torah, biblically speaking, the law is you can eat it all night till dawn. We already explained in the laws of chametz and matzah, where we described how to do the seder, that another law about eating is that you have to say halal while you eat it. And that members of the group cannot continue eating if they completely fell asleep. They have to all fall asleep, and they have to be in a deep sleep. That if you would ask them a question, they wouldn't be able to answer you. But if they did, they can no longer eat the Korban Pesach, afilu b'tchilas halayla, even if it was in the beginning of the night. They had a very busy Erev Pesach. They came to the Seder, they all fell asleep. Boom. They lose their right to eat the Korban Pesach. But otherwise, you can eat it with Hallel in a beautiful way.